They laughed when his mistress ripped my dress in front of 300 people. His mother spit in my face. His sister live-streamed my humiliation to 2 million followers. What they didn't know, I owned everything. The hotel, the bank, their futures. And in 6 hours, I was going to destroy them all. But here's the part that makes this different from every revenge story you've ever heard. I was 3 months pregnant. In the recording I had of my husband, he wasn't just cheating, he was planning to kill me for the insurance money. I had it all on tape. This isn't just about a woman getting revenge. This is about a teacher with nothing who inherited $847 million in secret, spent 5 years gathering evidence while being abused, then executed the most devastating public takedown you've ever seen. FBI arrests, terminated parental rights, a viral live stream that changed everything. But the story doesn't end at the gala. Because what happened after, the legal battles, the pregnancy crisis, the moment I almost lost everything, that's the part no one talks about. The part that will make you question everything you thought you knew about justice and survival. Before we dive in, do me one favor. If you believe that documenting your abuse isn't revenge, it's protection, drop a comment saying justice right now, hit that subscribe button, because next week's story is even more intense. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it. You might save a life. My name is Emma. This is the night I stopped being a victim and became a warrior. And you're about to hear every single detail. Let's begin. My name is Emma Morrison Mitchell, and this is how I made them all disappear. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 10 years, to the day I married the man who would try to kill me. I was 24 years old when I buried my parents. A drunk driver ran a red light on a Tuesday afternoon in March. My mom died instantly. My dad survived long enough to squeeze my hand in the ambulance before the internal bleeding took him. I was a sophomore in college. No siblings, no aunts or uncles, no grandparents, just me and $47,000 in life insurance money that couldn't fill the crater in my chest where my family used to be. I finished my degree on that money, English literature, got my teaching certificate, moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, because it was far enough from home that I wouldn't see ghosts on every corner, but close enough that I could still feel like I belonged somewhere. I taught high school English, made $32,000 a year, lived in a studio apartment with walls so thin I could hear my neighbor's television through the bathroom. I was surviving, but I wasn't living. 5 years after my parents died, I joined a community theater group. They were doing Our Town, which is ironic given what happened next. I auditioned for Emily, got cast as a townsperson instead, and showed up to rehearsals every Tuesday and Thursday just to feel like I was part of something again. That's where I met Ryan Mitchell. He was 32, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and the kind of smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was renovating the historic theater building, his construction crew working during the day while we rehearsed at night. He started staying late, watching rehearsals from the back row. After the third week, he approached me. "You're really good," he said, "natural, like you're not even acting." I laughed. "I'm a townsperson. I have 3 lines." "You make those 3 lines matter." It was a line. I knew it was a line. But when you've been alone for 5 years, when you've forgotten what it feels like to have someone see you, you take the line and you run with it. We started dating. Ryan was charming, attentive, romantic in ways I'd only read about in the novels I taught. He brought flowers to the school, surprised me with weekend trips to the mountains, introduced me to his family after just 2 months, which felt fast but also felt like he was serious about me. His mother, Carolyn, was a widow in her late 50s, impeccably dressed, with a smile that never quite reached her eyes. His sister, Bethany, was 29, worked in social media marketing, and had the kind of effortless beauty that made you feel underdressed in your own skin. They were polite but distant at that first meeting. Later, Ryan explained it away. "They're protective. Dad died 3 years ago. They're not used to me dating seriously." I believed him. I wanted to believe him, because Ryan made me feel safe in a way I hadn't felt since before my parents died. He talked about building a future together, about family, about never letting me be alone again. 6 months after we met, he proposed. It wasn't dramatic. We were sitting on his couch watching a movie when he turned to me and said, "Marry me. Let's build something permanent." I said yes before I even processed the question. We got married at the courthouse 3 weeks later. Ryan suggested it. "Let's keep it intimate, just us. We can have a big party later." I thought it was romantic. I didn't realize until much later that he didn't want witnesses to how his family treated me. The first 3 months of marriage were perfect. Ryan was attentive, loving, supportive. He came home every night. We cooked dinner together. We talked about our days. I thought I'd finally found what my parents had: a partnership, a real family. Then Carolyn's apartment building raised her rent. Ryan insisted she move in with us, just temporarily, until she finds something affordable. She moved into our guest room. She never left. Within a week, Carolyn had rearranged our furniture. She redecorated the living room without asking. She criticized how I folded towels, how I cooked chicken, how I dressed for work. "A teacher's salary might be modest, but that doesn't mean you should look modest," she said one morning as I was leaving for school. "You're representing Ryan now." When I complained to Ryan, he laughed it off. "She's just trying to help you improve. She raised me and Bethany. She knows what she's doing." I started doing all the housework. Carolyn would leave lists on the kitchen counter, vacuum the living room, clean the guest bathroom, do my laundry, and fold it properly this time. I'd come home from teaching all day to find a list of chores waiting for me while Carolyn watched television in the room that used to be my office. Bethany started showing up 3 times a week unannounced. She'd raid my closet, taking scarves and jewelry without asking. Once, she took a silk scarf my mother had given me for my 16th birthday. I asked for it back. "Your mom's dead," Bethany said, not even looking up from her phone. "She doesn't care." "I do," I told Ryan. He shrugged. "It's just a scarf. Let her have it." That's when I should have known. That's when I should have left. But I didn't, because I was terrified of being alone again. So I stayed. I adjusted. I told myself that families are complicated, that I should be grateful to have people around after years of loneliness. I didn't realize I was being systematically broken down. Ryan's construction business started struggling. At least, that's what he told me. He stopped contributing to household expenses. My teacher's salary, which had been tight when it was just supporting me, now covered rent, utilities, groceries for 3 people, and Carolyn's medical bills. When I asked Ryan about money, he'd get defensive. "I'm working on it. Business is slow. Just be patient." Bethany borrowed $500 for rent, then $800, then $1,200. She never paid any of it back. By the end of the first year, she owed me $4,700. When I mentioned it, she laughed. "Consider it family support. You're doing fine." I wasn't doing fine. I was drowning. But I smiled and said everything was great, because that's what you do when you've convinced yourself that being used is better than being alone. 18 months into the marriage, I got pregnant. I took the test in the school bathroom during my lunch break. 3 pink lines. I sat on the toilet lid and cried, not from fear, but from hope. A baby. A family member who would actually be mine. Someone who would love me unconditionally. I couldn't wait to tell Ryan. He was excited at first. He picked me up and spun me around. But then, almost immediately, his face changed. "Mom should move into the master bedroom. We'll take the smaller room. She'll need to be close to help with the baby." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Carolyn's response was worse. "Finally. Maybe you'll be useful for something." The pregnancy should have been joyful. Instead, it became another battleground. Carolyn gave me lists of foods I couldn't eat, activities I couldn't do, ways I was already failing as a mother. I was gaining weight too fast. I was too emotional. I wasn't preparing properly. Ryan sided with his mother every single time. I was 10 weeks pregnant when I came home from parent-teacher conferences at 8 in the evening. I'd been at school since 7 that morning. My feet were swollen. My back ached. I was exhausted and nauseous and desperately needing to lie down. The house was a disaster. Carolyn had invited friends over and left the mess for me to clean. Dishes piled in the sink. Food wrappers on the coffee table. Wine glasses everywhere. "What kind of mother are you going to be if you can't even keep a house clean?" Carolyn said from the couch where she was watching television. Something inside me snapped. "I'm 10 weeks pregnant, and I worked a 12-hour day. I need rest." Carolyn stood up. Her face went red. "You're pathetic. You're too stupid to be a mother. That baby deserves better than you. I started crying. I couldn't help it. Ryan walked in from the garage, heard me crying, and turned to his mother. Mom, that's harsh. I thought finally he was going to defend me. Instead, he pulled me aside and whispered, just apologize to her. You know how she gets. That night, lying in bed, I felt the first cramp, then another, then wetness between my legs. I turned on the light and saw blood. Ryan drove me to the emergency room. In the car, he said, don't make a scene. These things happen. The doctor did an ultrasound. She looked at the screen for a long time, then turned to me with sad eyes. I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat. I miscarried at 11 weeks and 4 days. The doctor performed a procedure to remove what was left. When I came home the next day, still bleeding and cramping and hollow, Carolyn looked at me from the kitchen table and said, God works in mysterious ways. Maybe you weren't meant to be a mother. Bethany was on her phone. She didn't even look up. Later, I saw she'd texted a friend. Thank God she lost it. Can you imagine her raising a kid? Ryan's only comment was, we can try again when you're less stressed. Like it was my fault. Like I'd somehow failed at the one thing women are supposed to be able to do naturally. I cried in the school bathroom during lunch for 3 weeks straight. A student noticed. Mrs. Mitchell, are you okay? Just allergies, I lied. The principal called me into her office. Emma, you've lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. You look exhausted. Is everything all right at home? Everything's perfect, I said and smiled so she'd believe me. That's the moment when people always ask, why didn't you leave? Why did you stay? Let me tell you why. Because when you've lost everyone you loved, when you've forgotten what it feels like to belong somewhere, when someone offers you the illusion of family, you'll endure anything to keep it. Even when that family is destroying you. Even when you know it's killing you piece by piece. Because being abused feels better than being alone. Until it doesn't. 6 months after the miscarriage, I was grading essays after school when the secretary knocked on my classroom door. Emma, this was delivered for you. Certified mail. I signed for it, confused. The return address was a law firm in downtown Charlotte, Harrison and Carter Legal Group, Estate Division. I opened the envelope right there at my desk. The letter started with the kind of formal language lawyers use. But 3 sentences in, I stopped breathing. You are named as the sole beneficiary of the estate of Dr. Rebecca Morrison Carter. Total estate value in $847 million. I read it 3 times. Then I Googled the law firm to make sure it wasn't a scam. They were legitimate, 40 years in business, top rated. I Googled Rebecca Morrison Carter. Her obituary was in the Wall Street Journal. Venture capitalist, early investor in Microsoft, Amazon, Google. Philanthropist, died at 79. No surviving spouse or children. And then I saw it. The connection I'd completely forgotten. Rebecca Carter had been my mother's college roommate at Duke University. I vaguely remembered my mom mentioning my friend Becca who lives in California. They'd lost touch over the years. I'd never met her, but apparently Rebecca had never forgotten about me. I called the law firm from the school parking lot. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. The meeting was scheduled for that Saturday at 10 in the morning. I told Ryan I was going to Target. I was too terrified to tell him the truth. Marcus Harrison's office was on the 42nd floor of a glass building in downtown Charlotte. He was in his 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen everything. When his assistant showed me into his office, he stood and shook my hand like I mattered. Mrs. Mitchell, thank you for coming. Please sit. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my car. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Is this real? The letter? The amount? Is any of this real? Marcus smiled gently. It's real. Dr. Bennett was very specific in her wishes. You are her sole beneficiary. But there are conditions we need to discuss. He slid a folder across his desk. Inside was a handwritten letter in a cream-colored stationery. I recognized my mother's name at the top. Dr. Bennett wrote this the year after your mother passed, Marcus explained. She'd been tracking your life from a distance. She knew about your struggles, your education, your marriage. She wanted to help, but she also wanted to make sure you chose your own path without the shadow of wealth influencing your decisions. I opened the letter. Rebecca's handwriting was elegant, confident. Dear Emma, If you're reading this, I'm gone. I loved your mother like a sister. I watched her marry a good man, build a beautiful life, and then lose it all too soon. I watched you grieve alone. I could have revealed myself then, but I wanted you to choose your path, your education, your career, your partner, without the influence of money. By the time this is revealed, you'll have been married long enough to know if you chose wisely. If you didn't, you now have the resources to escape. If you did, you now have the resources to build a legacy. The money is yours, but more importantly, the choice is yours. Use it well. Rebecca. I sat in silence for 5 full minutes. Marcus didn't rush me. Finally, I looked up. What are the conditions? Dr. Bennett's will stipulates that you cannot reveal the inheritance to anyone for 10 years from the date of your mother's death. That deadline is in 3 weeks. If you reveal it before then, and everything goes to charity. My mind raced. I've been married for 5 years. Correct. So if I'd known about this money when I met Ryan, you would never know if he married you or married the idea of controlling someone helpless. Marcus finished quietly. I felt something click into place in my chest. A cold, clear understanding. And now I know, I whispered on. He married someone he thought had nothing. Someone he could control. Marcus leaned forward. Emma, if you're in an unsafe situation, we can access emergency funds immediately. You don't have to stay there. I met his eyes. Can I access the inheritance now? Through legal structures my husband wouldn't know about. Marcus looked surprised, then impressed. Yes. We've managed everything in trust. You can access funds for specific purposes without triggering the disclosure clause. I took a deep breath. I have 3 weeks until I can legally reveal everything. I'm not leaving yet. Why not? Because I want to know how low he'll go. I want documentation, evidence. So when I destroy him, he can't claim he loved me. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's dangerous. I'm already in danger, I said. The difference is now I have resources he doesn't know about. Now I'm not helpless. What do you need from me? The best private investigator in North Carolina and a forensic accountant. I want to know everything about Ryan Mitchell. Marcus nodded slowly. I know exactly who to call. 3 days later, I met David Torres at a coffee shop 30 minutes outside Charlotte. He was former FBI, white-collar crimes division. He had the kind of face that could blend into any crowd and eyes that missed nothing. Marcus explained your situation, but what exactly are you looking for? Everything. His business, his finances, his daily movements. I want to know where every dollar comes from and where it goes. I want to know if he's lying about his business struggling. I want to know if there's anything else he's hiding from me. David studied me for a long moment. You're not planning to leave us yet. Not yet. Why down? Because I need evidence. I need proof that everything he's done to me has been calculated. And I need it to be ironclad. David nodded. I'll need access to some of your personal information. Bank accounts, credit cards. Can you get me that? Yes. This won't be cheap. Money isn't a problem. Something shifted in David's expression. All right then, let's find out who your husband really is. The investigation took 3 months. I lived my regular life during that time. I taught my classes. I came home and cleaned the house. I endured Carolyn's criticism and Bethany's visits and Ryan's dismissive comments. But now every insult was evidence. Every cruel moment was another brick in the case I was building. When David finally called me to Marcus's office to review his findings, I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. Your husband's business isn't struggling, David said. It's failing. It's been failing since your 2nd year of marriage. Revenue is down 60%. He's covering losses by taking out credit cards in your name. He slid documents across the table. Credit card applications with my forged signature. 12 different cards, all maxed out. Total debt in my name. $127,000. I felt dizzy. He forged my signature multiple times. He's also taking out personal loans using your Social Security number. And he's been transferring money from your direct deposit salary account to his business account before you even see the paychecks. Well, that's why I never have any money, I whispered. I thought I was just bad at budgeting. You're not bad at budgeting. You're being robbed. David pulled out more documents. Ryan has $470,000 in debt in his own name. Most of it is to private lenders, the kind of lenders who don't go through legal channels to collect. Loan sharks. Yes, he has 90 days to pay them back, or they're threatening violence. He's desperate, Emma. Desperate people do dangerous things. My hands were shaking. What about his mother? David's expression darkened. Carolyn Mitchell received $340,000 in life insurance when her husband died. She gambled it all away within 18 months. Online poker, casino trips to Vegas. She's now $67,000 in credit card debt, and she's been forging checks from your account to cover minimum payments. How much has she stolen? $23,400 over 3 years. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And Bethany? Bethany is running multi-level marketing schemes. She's using your address and credit for inventory purchases. When the schemes collapse, she declares bankruptcy and sticks you with the debt. She's done this 3 times. Total debt she's transferred to you, $41,000. I stared at the documents. They've been systematically destroying me. Yes, David said quietly. But there's more. He pulled out a different folder. This one had photos. Ryan's truck parked outside hotels, Ryan walking into apartment buildings, and Ryan with a woman I didn't recognize. Who is she? Amber Sinclair, 31 years old, luxury real estate agent, married to Kyle Sinclair, an Army Ranger currently deployed in South Korea. The affair started 14 months ago. They meet twice a week. He tells you he has late work meetings. Does her husband know? No. I looked at the photos. Ryan's hand on her waist, his face close to hers, laughing together, happy together in a way he'd never been with me. There's one more thing, David said. His voice changed, became more serious. I planted an audio device in Ryan's truck. It's legal in North Carolina with one-party consent. I recorded a conversation between him and Amber last week. He pulled out a small recording device and pressed play. Ryan's voice came through clearly. She doesn't suspect anything. She's too busy grading papers and trying to please my mother. Amber's voice. When are you going to leave her? It's complicated. She has nothing. No family, no money beyond her teacher salary, nowhere to go. If I divorce her, she'll make it messy. So what's the plan? There was a pause, then Ryan said, there's a life insurance policy, $2 million. If something happened to Emma, an accident maybe, stress-related health issue, the payout would clear all my debts and then some. I know. I'm talking about being smart. She's already fragile, had a miscarriage, depressed. If she had another breakdown, who would question it? Pills, maybe. An accidental overdose. Tragic young widow story. Another pause. Then Amber said, what do you need me to do? The recording stopped. I sat in Marcus's office, staring at the device. My husband had just discussed murdering me for insurance money. Not in abstract terms, not in anger, calmly, methodically, like he was planning a business deal. We go to the police, Marcus said. This is conspiracy to commit murder. No, I heard myself say. Emma, not yet. I looked up at both of them. In 60 days, there's the company anniversary gala. Mitchell Construction's 10th anniversary. 300 people, industry partners, investors, media. Ryan's last attempt to save his company image before the loan sharks destroy him. What are you thinking? David asked. I'm thinking that's the perfect stage. That's where I reveal everything. Publicly, completely. So he can't claim it was a misunderstanding. So everyone sees exactly who he is. Marcus looked worried. Emma, if he's planning to kill you, he thinks he has time. He thinks I'm clueless. Let him think that for 60 more days while I build an airtight case. Let him plan. Let him dig himself deeper. And then, when he thinks he's about to win, I'll destroy him. I stood up. Can you arrange for FBI involvement? Have them ready to arrest him at the gala? David nodded slowly. I can make that happen. Good. I picked up my purse. I need to get home. Ryan thinks I'm at Target. As I walked to my car, I felt different, stronger. For 5 years, I'd been a victim, but victims don't have $847 million. Victims don't have private investigators and evidence files and a plan. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a weapon, and I was finally ready to fire. The next 8 weeks were the strangest of my life. On the surface, nothing changed. I still taught English to bored teenagers, still came home to Carolyn's criticism and Bethany's visits, still smiled at Ryan across the dinner table while he complained about his difficult day. But underneath, I was methodically building a case that would destroy all of them. Linda Cooper, the forensic accountant Marcus hired, was a quiet woman in her 40s who'd spent 20 years at the IRS before going private. She had a gift for finding money people tried to hide. "Your husband is facing bankruptcy within 6 months," she told me at our third meeting. "He's juggling 12 creditors, missing payments, taking out new loans to pay old ones. It's a house of cards. Can we accelerate the collapse?" Linda looked at me with something like respect. "I can make strategic calls to certain creditors, anonymous tips about other debts. It would create a cascade effect. Force their hand. Do it." While Linda worked on Ryan's finances, David continued surveillance. He documented every meeting with Amber, every lie Ryan told me about working late, every expensive dinner he charged on credit cards while telling me we couldn't afford groceries. The evidence file grew thicker every week. Forged signatures, fraudulent loan applications, recorded conversations about my planned accident, bank transfers showing systematic theft. It was overwhelming, damning, perfect. But then everything changed. I missed my period. At first, I thought it was stress. I'd been running on adrenaline and coffee for weeks, barely sleeping, constantly looking over my shoulder. But when the nausea started, when I couldn't get through first period without running to the bathroom, I knew. I took the pregnancy test in the school bathroom during lunch break. 3 tests, actually, because I couldn't believe the first 2. All positive. I sat on the toilet lid and cried. Not from joy this time, from terror. The gala was 5 weeks away. I'd be 11 weeks pregnant by then. Not showing yet, but pregnant. And if I revealed everything and divorced Ryan while pregnant, what happened to custody? I called Marcus from my car. "I'm pregnant." There was a long pause. "Oh, Emma. What happens with custody if I'm pregnant during divorce proceedings?" Marcus sighed. "In North Carolina, if you're pregnant when you file, the court typically waits until after birth to finalize. And biological fathers have rights, even if they're facing criminal charges." "Even if he planned to kill me?" "We'd have to prove it in criminal court first. Get him convicted? That takes time." "How much time?" "A year, maybe more. And during that time, he'd have legal access to the baby." I felt the walls closing in. "So I'm trapped." "Not trapped, but it's complicated." I sat in the school parking lot for an hour after that call, staring at nothing. My options ran through my head like a nightmare loop. I could terminate the pregnancy. North Carolina law allowed abortions up to 12 weeks. It would ensure a clean break from Ryan. No custody battles. No lifetime connection to my abuser. But after the miscarriage, after believing I'd never have another chance at motherhood, could I choose to end this pregnancy? Even knowing what it would cost me? I could continue the pregnancy and execute the plan. Hope that the evidence was strong enough to get Ryan convicted before the baby was born. Risk everything on the legal system working the way it was supposed to. Or I could abandon the revenge plan entirely. Quietly divorce Ryan, take my inheritance money and disappear. Raise the baby alone somewhere far away and hope he never found us. But I knew Ryan, knew how vindictive he could be. If I ran, he'd spend the rest of his life hunting me. And a man desperate enough to plan murder once would plan it again. The only way I'd truly be safe was if Ryan had nothing left to fight with. No money, no freedom, no parental rights, complete, total legal destruction. I called Marcus back. "I'm keeping the baby, and I'm moving forward with the plan." "Emma, this is incredibly dangerous. Living with him is incredibly dangerous. At least now I'm fighting back." The next 4 weeks were a blur of preparation. David coordinated with federal prosecutors. Linda prepared financial documentation for criminal charges. Marcus drafted divorce papers and custody motions. And I continued living with Ryan, smiling and cooking dinner, and pretending I didn't know he was planning to kill me. The pregnancy complicated everything. I was exhausted all the time, nauseous, emotional. Hiding it from Ryan was harder than I expected. I pretended to have stomach flu. Started eating crackers constantly to settle my stomach. Avoided situations where he might notice my body changing. Bethany noticed first, of course. She was at the house for one of her regular raids of my closet when she looked at me critically. "Are you pregnant?" My blood went cold. No, just stressed about work." "You look pregnant. Puffy face, eating weird." "I'm not pregnant," I said firmly. She shrugged. "Good, you'd be a terrible mother anyway." I smiled at her, counted silently to 10, added another line to the mental list of things I'd never forgive. 2 weeks before the gala, I had my first ultrasound. I went alone, telling Ryan I had a dentist appointment. The technician squirted gel on my barely there belly and moved the wand around. "There's the heartbeat," she said, turning the monitor toward me. I watched the tiny flicker on the screen. Fast and strong and alive. A person who didn't ask to be born into this mess. "Do you want to know the sex?" the technician asked. "Not yet," I whispered. "Not until this is all over." Because there was a possibility this pregnancy wouldn't survive. If the stress got too high, if my blood pressure spiked, if something went wrong during the gala confrontation, I could lose this baby just like I lost the first one. But I couldn't think about that. I had to focus on the plan. The night before the wheel, I stood in our bedroom while Ryan slept. I was wearing the dress I'd bought for the event. Simple cream-colored cotton. $68 from Target. Nothing fancy, nothing that would compete with the designer gowns the other women would wear. Ryan had complained when he saw it. "That's what you're wearing? To the most important night of my career?" "I thought simple was elegant," I'd said. "You thought wrong." Now, alone in the dark, I touched my stomach. Still flat, the baby was the size of a lime. Tiny, fragile, depending on me completely. "I don't know if you can hear me yet," I whispered, "but I need to tell you something. Tomorrow, I'm going to burn down the life I've been living. I'm going to expose your father for what he is, and I'm terrified. Because what if it goes wrong? What if I can't protect you?" I smoothed the dress, but I'm more terrified of what happens if I do nothing. If I let you be born into this house, with his mother telling you that women are worthless, with his sister teaching you that cruelty is funny, with him teaching you that abuse is love. Tears ran down my face. So tomorrow I fight. Not just for me, for you. And if anyone asked why I wore such a cheap dress to such an important event, I'll know the truth. This dress is the last thing they'll remember about the woman they thought I was. Because after tomorrow, I'm someone completely different. After tomorrow, I'm your mother, and no one will ever underestimate me again. I set my alarm, climbed into bed next to the man who wanted me dead, and somehow, impossibly, I slept. The Grand Monroe Hotel was everything Ryan had wanted for this night. Glittering chandeliers, marble floors, a ballroom that could hold 300 people comfortably. He'd spent $45,000 on this event, every cent borrowed from a final desperate credit source. What Ryan didn't know was that the Grand Monroe was owned by Piedmont Hospitality Group, one of Rebecca Carter's investment portfolios. I'd been the silent owner of this hotel for 3 months. Every staff member worked for me. Every security camera recorded to servers I controlled. Ryan thought he was showcasing his success. He was actually walking into a trap. We arrived at 6:15. Ryan wore an $800 suit he'd charged to a credit card in my name. He was nervous, I could tell, adjusting his tie constantly, checking his phone. The loan sharks had contacted him that morning. Their deadline was in 48 hours. I wore my Target dress and simple black flats. My hair was pulled back in a plain ponytail. I looked exactly like what I was supposed to look like, the forgettable wife who didn't deserve to be there. Carolyn arrived separately. She took one look at me, and her face twisted with disgust. "Oh, Emma, that's what you're wearing to the most important night of Ryan's career? I thought simple was elegant." "You thought wrong. You look like you're going to a church potluck, not a gala." Ryan didn't defend me. He was already scanning the room for investors, for business partners, for people who mattered more than I did. Bethany arrived 20 minutes later in a designer gown I recognized from my own closet. She'd taken it months ago. She saw me looking and smiled. Love your dress, Emma. Very thrift store chic. She immediately started taking selfies, posting to Instagram with location tags and hashtags. I'd specifically requested the hotel's Wi-Fi network log all social media posts from the event. Every photo Bethany posted was being archived as evidence. At 6:45, Amber Sinclair made her entrance. She wasn't supposed to be there. Her name wasn't on the guest list, but she walked in wearing a blood-red gown that probably cost more than my car, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like she belonged. Ryan saw her. His face went pale, then flushed. She walked directly to him and kissed his cheek, whispered something in his ear. He nodded. I watched from across the room. David was also watching, his long-range microphone recording every word. Later, I'd learn what she said. Ready for the show? Dinner was served at 7. The seating arrangement was calculated to humiliate me. I was placed at a table in the back corner with contractors' wives, women I'd never met who spent dinner discussing their renovations and vacation homes while I pushed food around my plate and tried not to throw up from morning sickness. Ryan sat at the head table with investors. Amber was there too somehow. She must have sweet-talked her way into a seat change, or Ryan arranged it. Either way, they were together at the most important table while I was hidden in the back. Carolyn and Bethany sat at the second-tier table with Ryan's business associates, close enough to the action to feel important, far enough from me to pretend I didn't exist. When Ryan stood to give his speech, the room quieted. 10 years ago, I started this company with nothing but a dream and determination, he said, his voice confident, charming. I built it through hard work and sacrifice. I listened to him lie about building his business through hard work, the same business he'd built on my forged credit cards and stolen salary. I couldn't have done it without the support of my family, he continued. My mother, Carolyn, who taught me resilience. Carolyn beamed, people applauded. My sister, Bethany, who always believed in me. Bethany raised her glass. More applause. A long pause. Ryan looked around the room. Finally, his eyes landed on me. And my wife, Emma, who supports me in her own way. Polite, awkward applause. A few uncomfortable laughs. The message was clear. I was an afterthought, a footnote in his success story. I sat perfectly still, smiled politely, and counted the minutes until I could destroy him. After dinner, the band started playing. Couples moved to the dance floor. I stayed at my table, watching. One of the contractor's wives leaned over. Your husband seems very successful, she said kindly. He certainly seems that way, I replied. At 8 o'clock, Ryan and Amber danced together. They weren't even pretending anymore. His hands were low on her waist. Their faces were close. They moved together like they'd done this 100 times before. The photographer I'd hired captured everything. Bethany pulled out her phone and filmed them, posting to Instagram with heart emojis and fire emojis. I stood up, walked toward the dance floor. Carolyn intercepted me. Don't make a scene, she hissed. I just want to talk to my husband. Your husband is busy. Go back to your table. I stepped around her, walked through the crowd, reached Ryan and Amber as the song ended. Ryan, can we talk? Amber turned to me. Up close, she was even more beautiful. Perfect skin, perfect teeth, everything I wasn't. He's busy, she said. I was talking to my husband. Your husband? She laughed. Honey, look around. Does he look like your husband right now? People were starting to notice. A circle was forming around us. Phones came out. This was exactly what I needed. Amber grabbed a champagne glass from a passing waiter. Let me help you out. Ryan is moving on. You're the past. I'm the future. She raised the glass. Here's to new beginnings. Then she poured the entire glass down the front of my dress. The crowd gasped. Red wine spread across the cream fabric like blood. I stood perfectly still, letting it happen, letting everyone see. Carolyn rushed over. Oh my God, Emma, you're such a klutz. You spilled wine on yourself. She was rewriting reality in real time, trying to control the narrative. She poured it on me, I said clearly. Don't be dramatic. Everyone saw you stumble. Bethany was filming. This is going to be viral content. Wife fail. Amber, emboldened by the lack of consequences, stepped closer. That dress was ugly anyway. Let me help you out of it. She grabbed the neckline of my dress and ripped. The fabric tore. My shoulder was exposed. I stumbled backward. The crowd murmured. Some people looked horrified. Others laughed uncomfortably. Business partners looked at Ryan. Are you going to do something? Ryan shrugged. Emma's always been dramatic. Probably had too much to drink. I'd had zero alcohol. I was 11 weeks pregnant, but he didn't know that. Hotel security started moving toward us. I held up one hand. Stop. They stopped. They were my employees. They didn't know it yet, but they followed my command instinctively. I looked at Amber, at Carolyn, at Bethany, at Ryan. Slowly, calmly, I smiled. Are you finished? Amber laughed. Finished? Honey, I'm just getting started. You're nothing. You have nothing. You are nothing. I smiled wider. You're right about one thing. This dress was ugly. Thank you for ruining it. Now I never have to look at the woman I was pretending to be ever again. I turned and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted. Behind me, Bethany shouted, "That's right, run away! That's all you know how to do." I didn't run. I walked with my head high, torn dress and wine-stained and powerful, to the hotel's business center. The front desk clerk looked up. Can I help you? Is the business center available? Yes, ma'am, but it's $25 per hour. That's fine. Can you also get me the hotel manager? Tell them Emma Mitchell needs to speak with them. Urgently. While I waited, I opened my laptop, logged into the Instagram account I'd built over the past 6 months. 2,400 followers. Small but engaged. People who knew me as Emma, high school English teacher, day in the life content, book recommendations, relatable struggles. I went live. Within seconds, people started joining. 50 viewers, 100, 200. I looked at the camera, at my torn, wine-stained dress, at my tear-streaked face, and I told the truth. Hi, everyone. Some of you know me as Emma, high school English teacher. What you don't know is that about 20 minutes ago, my husband's mistress poured wine on my dress and ripped it in front of 300 people at a company gala. My mother-in-law called me garbage. My sister-in-law is posting videos mocking me as we speak. The viewer count jumped. 500. 1,000. You might be wondering why I'm sharing this. Why when I'm not crying? Why I'm not hiding? Let me tell you a story. I told them everything. My parents' death, my loneliness, meeting Ryan, the systematic abuse, the miscarriage, the discovery of Rebecca Carter's inheritance, the 10-year waiting period, Ryan's fraud, the recorded conversation about murdering me for insurance money. The viewer count exploded. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. The hotel where this gala is happening? I own it. The bank that holds his business loans? My investment portfolio owns 40% of it. I've been documenting everything for months. And in about 30 minutes, the FBI is going to arrest my husband for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. 50,000 viewers. I'm not a victim. I'm a witness. I've spent months building an airtight case, and now I'm pressing charges. I looked directly into the camera. To everyone who laughed tonight, who filmed me, who thought I was nothing, you were wrong. To every woman watching this who's been told she's worthless, who's endured abuse, who's been silenced, document everything, build your case, and when you're ready, burn it all down. 100,000 viewers. My name is Emma Morrison Mitchell. I'm worth $847 million, and I'm just getting started. I ended the live stream. Views were still climbing, already at 200,000. The hotel manager knocked on the door. Mrs. Mitchell? I looked up. I need you to send a bill for tonight's gala to Ryan Mitchell's company. Full price, $45,000. Due immediately. When he can't pay, I want you to sue Mitchell Construction LLC for breach of contract. The manager looked confused. Ma'am, I don't have the authority to. I'm the owner of Piedmont Hospitality Group. You work for me. Send the bill. Understanding dawned. Yes, ma'am, right away. At exactly 9 o'clock, 7 FBI agents entered the ballroom. I didn't see it happen. I was still in the business center, watching my live stream go viral. But David called me. It's done, they just arrested him. I closed my eyes. And the others? Carolyn's being arrested for check fraud. Bethany's not being arrested tonight, but she's being served with a cease and desist. Amber's being questioned. Good. I walked out of the business center, through the lobby, past the curious stares of hotel guests who'd seen my live stream. Outside, where news cameras were waiting, a reporter thrust a microphone at me. Mrs. Mitchell, how do you feel? I looked at the camera, at my torn dress, at the wine stains that would never come out. Powerful, I said. Then I got in my car and drove home. The video hit 4 million views by morning. By the end of the week, it was at 12 million. I became a case study overnight. Women's magazines wanted interviews. Morning shows called. Legal analysts debated whether what I did was justice or revenge. Ryan sat in county jail, unable to make bail. His lawyer had argued for release, but the prosecutor presented the recorded conversations about killing me. The judge set bail at $750,000. Ryan couldn't afford it. Carolyn was also in jail. Her bail was set at $50,000, which she also couldn't pay. She'd gambled away her life insurance money and stolen from me for years. She had nothing left. Bethany wasn't arrested, but the cease and desist letter and defamation lawsuit I'd filed made her disappear from social media. All her accounts went private. The videos she'd posted mocking me became evidence. Amber Sinclair's husband, Kyle, was informed of her affair while deployed in South Korea. I'd made sure he received a complete evidence package. He immediately filed for divorce. As the spouse of active duty military, Amber's adultery became a military matter as well. Her perfect life unraveled in 48 hours. I moved out of the house I'd shared with Ryan. It was a rental anyway, in his name, and I had no attachment to it. I bought a small house in a quiet neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, a yard, a nursery that I slowly, carefully began decorating. At my 12-week ultrasound, alone in the doctor's office, I finally asked the question, "Can you tell the baby's sex?" The technician smiled. "Do you want to know?" "Yes." "You're having a girl." I burst into tears, happy tears, terrified tears. A daughter. I was going to have a daughter. In this world, with all its complexity and danger and beauty, the doctor squeezed my hand. "Everything looks healthy. Strong heartbeat, good growth. You're doing great, Emma." But I wasn't doing great, not really, because 3 weeks later, Marcus called with news that shattered my fragile sense of safety. The prosecutor is offering Ryan a plea deal. I almost dropped the phone. "What? Why?" "Budget cuts. Their office is overwhelmed. Ryan's lawyer is expensive and aggressive. They want to avoid a lengthy trial." "What's the deal?" Marcus sighed. "Ryan pleads guilty to 8 counts instead of the original 47. He'd serve 5 years in prison, 3 years probation." 5 years? I could barely speak. "He was going to kill me." "I know, but the conspiracy charge is difficult to prove without him taking concrete steps. The financial crimes are solid, but white-collar sentences are light. Can we fight this?" "We can try, but if it goes to trial and the jury acquits him on the major charges, he could walk with time served." I sat down hard. "I'm 16 weeks pregnant, Marcus. If he gets 5 years, he'll be out in 3 or 4 with good behavior. My daughter will be 3 years old." "I know. And he'll have parental rights." "Biological fathers have rights, Emma. I wish I could tell you otherwise." Ryan's lawyer filed a motion immediately. Paternity test required. The court agreed. The test confirmed what I already knew. Ryan was the father. Then came the custody hearing. I was 18 weeks pregnant, finally starting to show. I wore a loose dress to hide it, but everyone in the courtroom knew. Ryan's defense strategy was masterful. His expensive lawyer presented him as a man who'd made mistakes under tremendous business pressure. Who was remorseful, who deserved a second chance. Character witnesses testified. Carolyn, out on bail, swore Ryan was a wonderful son who'd always dreamed of being a father. Business associates talked about his work ethic. Even some of his creditors spoke about how he tried to make things right. The prosecution argued that he'd planned to murder me for insurance money, that he was a danger. Ryan's lawyer shot back, "Alleged plot. The recording is ambiguous. My client never took concrete steps. He vented frustration. He didn't act on it. A court-ordered psychologist evaluated both of us. Ryan's evaluation, paid for by his expensive lawyer, showed remorse, commitment to change, low risk to reoffend. My evaluation was worse. It noted my trauma, which was expected, but it also mentioned vindictiveness and difficulty with co-parenting. The recommendation was that shared custody post-incarceration would be in the child's best interest. I sat in the courthouse bathroom after that hearing and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. I did everything right, I whispered to my reflection. I documented everything. I followed the law, and he's still going to have access to my baby. But I couldn't give up. Marcus filed an appeal. We'd found a second life insurance policy Ryan had taken out on me. $3.5 million. If we could get that admitted as evidence, it would strengthen the conspiracy charges. For 2 days, I let myself hope. I had my 20-week anatomy ultrasound. Everything was perfect. The baby was healthy, strong. I started buying tiny clothes, planning the nursery, imagining a future where my daughter and I were safe. Then Bethany launched her counterattack. She created a TikTok series called The Real Emma Mitchell. Using old photos, manipulated context, and strategic editing, she painted me as the villain, a secret billionaire who'd watched her husband struggle, who'd entrapped him, who'd documented everything not for safety, but for revenge. The videos went viral immediately. 2.3 million views in 48 hours. The comments were vicious. She was rich the whole time and let him fail. She's a psychopath. Who collects evidence for 5 years? She could have just divorced him. This is cruel. Amber Sinclair gave an interview to a local news station. She positioned herself as a victim too. Emma knew about the affair for months. She allowed it to continue so she could gather evidence. She used me as a pawn. The public narrative shifted. Suddenly, I wasn't a survivor. I was a calculated billionaire destroying a working-class family. Parents at my school complained. The principal called me into her office. Emma, maybe you should take early maternity leave. Let this blow over. They're forcing me out, I said. No one's forcing you, but this is a lot of attention for the school. I was 24 weeks pregnant when I stopped teaching. The bomb that had kept me sane, that had given me purpose, was gone. I tried to fight back. I agreed to an interview with a legitimate journalist, showed all the evidence, the recordings, the financial documents, the medical records from my miscarriage. The article helped. Some people understood. Women's advocates rallied. The hashtag I Stand With Emma trended for a day, but the damage was done. I was controversial now. Divisive. Half the internet thought I was brave. The other half thought I was vindictive. I was 26 weeks pregnant, sitting in my new house, reading the comments about myself online when the email arrived. From the prison system, inmate Ryan Mitchell has been granted work release program. Model prisoner will be released to halfway house in 8 months. Full release in 2.5 years with good behavior. I couldn't breathe. 2.5 years. My daughter would be 18 months old. My hands started shaking. My vision blurred. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't hold me. The panic attack hit like a freight train. I called 911. I'm pregnant and something's wrong. The paramedics arrived in 6 minutes. My blood pressure was 180 over 110, dangerously high. They rushed me to the hospital. The emergency room doctor took one look at my chart and called for the OB on call. You have severe preeclampsia, she said. Pregnancy-induced hypertension from stress. Your blood pressure is critical. The baby's heart rate is dropping. We need to deliver now. It's too early. She's only 28 weeks. If we don't deliver, you could have a stroke. The baby could die. We have no choice. At 2:34 in the morning, they performed an emergency C-section. My daughter was born weighing 2 pounds, 9 ounces. She wasn't breathing on her own. They intubated her immediately. Rushed her to the NICU. I woke up from anesthesia hours later. The doctor stood beside my bed. Your daughter is alive. She's in critical condition. The next 72 hours are crucial. Can I see her? Not yet. You need to stabilize too. Your blood pressure is still dangerous. It took 2 days before they'd let me go to the NICU. When they finally wheeled me down, when I finally saw my daughter for the first time, I couldn't speak. She was so small, smaller than I'd imagined a human could be. Tubes everywhere, monitors beeping, machines breathing for her. I could only touch her through the incubator openings. Couldn't hold her, couldn't comfort her. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "This is my fault. I chose revenge over your safety." The nurse squeezed my shoulder. "This isn't your fault. Preeclampsia happens." But I knew better. The stress had done this. My plan, my fight, my determination to destroy Ryan had nearly killed us both. 5 days after the delivery, while my daughter fought for her life in an incubator, Ryan's attorney filed paperwork from prison. Paternity test, visitation rights, the ability to suggest names. The judge granted everything. I had to FaceTime Ryan from the NICU, hold my phone so he could see the baby he'd helped create. The baby whose early birth was caused by the stress of fighting him. "She's beautiful," he said through the screen. "What should we name her?" "Charlotte," I said, "after the city where I finally escaped you." "Charlotte Mitchell, I like it. Can't wait to meet her in person." After the call ended, I broke down completely. He's going to be in her life, forever. I can't protect her. The grief counselor assigned to me tried to help. "You're experiencing trauma and postpartum depression. You need support." But support couldn't change the legal reality. Unless Ryan committed another crime, unless he voluntarily gave up his rights, he would always be Charlotte's father in the eyes of the law. Charlotte spent 10 weeks in the NICU, 10 weeks of infections and setbacks and terrifying alarms. 10 weeks of me sleeping in a chair beside her incubator, barely eating, barely functioning. But she survived. She grew. She got stronger. When she finally came home, weighing 5 pounds 2 ounces, I held her in the nursery I'd prepared and made her a promise. "I don't know how to protect you from him, but I'll figure it out. I swear I'll figure it out." Charlotte was 12 weeks old, a justed age, when David Torres called. I was sitting in the nursery rocking her to sleep. She'd been home from the NICU for 2 weeks, still so tiny, still so fragile, but alive, thriving. "Emma, I never stopped digging," David said. "I found something." I was exhausted, overwhelmed, ready to give up the fight. "I'm done, David. I can't do this anymore." "You need to hear this." "What is it?" "Prison phone calls are recorded. Standard procedure. Ryan called Amber from jail. She accepted the call." My stomach dropped. "And?" "He discussed finishing what they started." Exact quote. "When I get out, we finish what we started. Emma won't see it coming. We'll go for full custody, drain her inheritance through legal fees, then make sure she has an accident when Charlotte's old enough to not remember her." I stopped rocking. "He's still planning to kill me." "Yes." And Amber's response was, "I'm still in, baby. We play the long game. It's premeditation, Emma. Clear and concrete this time. No ambiguity." For the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt rage. "Send me the recording." "I'm sending it to the prosecutor too. This changes everything." The new prosecutor, who'd taken over after the original one left, listened to the recording twice. Then she called me into her office. "We're refiling charges. Conspiracy to commit murder with a concrete plan. Ryan's plea deal is revoked. Amber Sinclair is being arrested as a co-conspirator." "What about the trial?" "We're going forward. With both the original and new evidence, we have an ironclad case." Ryan's expensive lawyer tried to fight it. My client was venting, hypothetical talk, but the prosecutor was fierce. He planned specific steps. That's conspiracy, not hypothetical. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified for 4 hours, showed the financial fraud, the forged signatures, the stolen money, played both recordings about killing me. Ryan's lawyer had nothing. No defense that made sense. No way to explain away his own recorded words. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Identity theft. Wire fraud. 47 counts total. At sentencing, the judge looked at Ryan with disgust. "Mr. Mitchell, you systematically abused, defrauded, and attempted to murder your wife. You showed no remorse. Even from prison, you continued plotting her death. I'm sentencing you to 28 years in state prison. You will serve a minimum of 24 years before parole eligibility. 28 years. Charlotte would be an adult before he got out. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. The parental rights hearing happened the same day, same judge. Mr. Mitchell, given your conviction for conspiracy to murder the mother of your child, I'm terminating your parental rights effective immediately. You are legally no longer Charlotte Mitchell's father. I sat in the courtroom and cried, not from sadness, from relief so profound it felt like flying. He couldn't touch her, couldn't claim her, couldn't hurt her. She was mine, only mine, forever. 6 months after Ryan's sentencing, I stood in the garden of my new home with Charlotte on my hip. She was 14 months old now, adjusted for her early birth. Walking, babbling, laughing, healthy and strong and completely unaware that she'd been born into a war. I'd started a foundation called Second Chance Start. It helped abuse survivors document evidence, provided legal support, offered safe housing and financial assistance. In 6 months, we'd helped 3,400 women escape dangerous situations. I testified before Congress about domestic violence laws, about financial abuse, about the importance of documentation. I became a national advocate without meaning to. The woman in the torn dress became a symbol. But symbols aren't real. They're projections, simplified versions of complicated truths. The truth was I still had nightmares, still woke up at 3 in the morning in a panic, checking Charlotte's room to make sure she was breathing, still flinched when men raised their voices, still struggled with the weight of everything that had happened. I hired a therapist, Dr. Sarah Bennett, no relation to Rebecca. She was patient and understanding and didn't let me minimize my trauma. You survived abuse, she said during our 4th session. You also inflicted consequences. Those aren't mutually exclusive. People online say I'm vindictive. People online don't understand the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is hurting someone to make yourself feel better. Justice is protecting yourself and others from future harm. What you did was justice. It doesn't always feel that way. That's because you're human, and being human means living with complexity. I also reconnected with my old principal, Mrs. Henderson. She called me 6 months after I left. Emma, I'm sorry. We should have supported you better. The school board forced my hand, but I should have fought harder. It's okay. It's not. But I want you to know that we're starting a program, teaching students about healthy relationships, about recognizing abuse, about documenting evidence safely. We're calling it the Emma Morrison curriculum. I'd like your input. I helped design it, went back to the school to train teachers, saw my old students who were now seniors preparing for college. One girl approached me after the training. Mrs. Mitchell, my mom is in a bad relationship. Can you help her? Yes, I said, I can help her. That became my purpose, not revenge, not even justice exactly. Protection, prevention, making sure other women didn't have to fight the same battles I'd fought. Charlotte started walking at 15 months. Her first steps were toward me, in the garden, on a warm October afternoon. I caught her and spun her around, and we both laughed until we couldn't breathe. You're safe, I whispered into her hair. You're always going to be safe. People always want to know if it was worth it, if the revenge, the risk, the trauma, if all of it was worth what I gained. Here's what I never told them in interviews. Here's what I couldn't say on television or in magazine profiles or to the thousands of women who emailed me their stories. I wouldn't have married Ryan Mitchell if I could go back. But I did marry him. And once I did, there was only one way out that kept me and my daughter safe. Complete, legal, documented destruction. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted survival. They laughed at my dress. They mocked my pain. They planned my murder. But what they didn't understand is that silence isn't weakness. Patience isn't acceptance. Documentation isn't paranoia, it's survival. Ryan is in prison for 28 years. He'll be 63 when he's eligible for parole. Charlotte will be 26. An adult with her own life, her own career, her own understanding of who her father was and why he's not in her life. Carolyn served 18 months for check fraud and identity theft. When she was released, she moved to Florida. I've never heard from her again. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about the grandson she'll never meet, the relationship she destroyed through her own cruelty. Bethany settled the defamation lawsuit for $200,000 and signed a non-disclosure agreement. She deleted all her social media accounts. Last I heard, she was working as an administrative assistant in Tennessee, living a quiet life far from the spotlight she used to crave. Amber Sinclair is serving 12 years as an accessory to conspiracy to commit murder. Her military husband divorced her. Her real estate license was revoked. Her perfect life disappeared even faster than mine had. And me, I have my daughter. I have my peace. I have my purpose. Charlotte will grow up knowing her mother wasn't a victim who stayed silent. She was a strategist who waited for the perfect moment to strike. And when that moment came, she didn't just win. She made sure the people who hurt her could never hurt anyone else. That's not revenge. That's justice. That's protection. That's love. Sometimes late at night when Charlotte is sleeping and the house is quiet, I think about the woman I was 10 years ago, the lonely teacher who thought she'd finally found a family, the woman who endured abuse because she was terrified of being alone. I think about how I would have told her, if I could go back, that being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen. That loneliness is temporary, but trauma is lasting. That she deserved better than settling for people who treated her like she was disposable. But I can't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward with the knowledge we've gained and the scars we've earned and the determination to never let it happen again. I named my foundation Second Chance Start because everyone deserves a second chance. Not the abusers, us, the survivors, the women who stayed too long and left too late and had to rebuild from ashes. We deserve a second chance at life, at safety, at peace, at joy. And we deserve people who will help us get there. 3 years after the gala, I stood in a congressional hearing room in Washington, D.C. Charlotte was with a trusted babysitter, playing at home, unaware that her mother was about to testify about domestic violence legislation. The committee chair called me forward. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for being here today." I'd legally changed my name back after the divorce. Emma Morrison, the name my parents gave me, the name I'd had before I became someone's wife, someone's victim, someone's target. Thank you for inviting me. I testified for 90 minutes about the gaps in domestic violence law, about how financial abuse isn't taken seriously, about how conspiracy to commit murder is difficult to prove until someone is actually dead, about how custody laws favor biological parents even when those parents are dangerous. A senator from Texas asked, "Ms. Morrison, some critics say your response to your situation was extreme, that you could have simply divorced your husband and moved on. What do you say to that?" I looked directly at him. "Senator, I documented everything because I knew no one would believe me without proof. I waited to reveal the inheritance because I wanted to see who my husband really was. I pressed charges because I wanted legal protection, not just financial escape. And I fought the custody battle because I knew that if I didn't completely, legally, permanently remove Ryan Mitchell's ability to control me, he would spend the rest of his life trying. He said so himself on a recorded prison phone call, planning my murder. Again, I paused. I didn't do this for revenge. I did this for survival. And I did it so thoroughly because half measures don't work with abusers. They see weakness. They exploit mercy. The only way to be truly safe was to make sure he had nothing left to fight with. No money, no freedom, no parental rights, no ability to ever hurt me or my daughter again." The senator nodded slowly. "Thank you for that perspective." Another senator, a woman from California, leaned forward. "Ms. Morrison, your foundation has helped thousands of women. What do you want them to know?" "I want them to know that leaving is possible, that building a case is possible, that protecting yourself legally is possible. But I also want them to know that it's hard. It's dangerous. It requires patience and documentation and resources that not everyone has. That's why we need better laws, better protection, better support systems, so that women don't have to do what I did, don't have to become their own lawyers and investigators and warriors just to be safe." The hearing lasted 4 hours. Afterwards, several senators approached me privately. "We're drafting new legislation," one said, financial abuse as a criminal offense, expanded definitions of conspiracy, better custody protections. Would you be willing to consult? Yes, I said, absolutely yes. Because that was the point. Not just my survival, everyone's survival. I flew home that night. Charlotte was asleep when I arrived. I stood in her doorway watching her breathe, watching her chest rise and fall in the peaceful rhythm of a child who's never known fear. She would never remember Ryan, would never know what he'd planned to do to me, to us. She would grow up with bedtime stories and birthday parties and summer camps and all the normal things children deserve. And when she was old enough to ask about her father, I would tell her the truth. Not a simplified version, not a villain or a victim narrative. The whole complicated truth about a man who seemed charming and turned out to be dangerous. About a system that almost failed us. About a woman who refused to accept that failure. I would tell her that sometimes you have to fight not because you want to, but because you have no other choice. And that fighting doesn't make you vengeful. It makes you strong. 5 years after the night of the gala, I stood in the Grand Monroe Hotel ballroom again. The same space where I'd been humiliated. The same marble floors where wine had been poured on my dress. But this time I was hosting an event. A fundraiser for Second Chance Start. 500 people. Media coverage. Corporate sponsors. The governor was scheduled to speak. I wore a navy blue dress, custom made, perfectly tailored, expensive in a way that said I belonged here, that I'd always belonged here, that the woman in the cheap Target dress had been a disguise I'd worn for a reason. Charlotte, now 6 years old, was with Mrs. Henderson at the children's program downstairs. She was in first grade, thriving, happy, surrounded by friends and love and stability. Marcus Harrison approached me before the event started. He was 70 now, planning to retire soon, but he'd wanted to be here tonight. Emma, this is remarkable. Look at what you've built. We built it, I corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You would have found a way, you always do. David Torres was there too, with his wife and adult daughter. He'd become a close friend over the years. Family, really, in the way that people who see you at your worst and still stand beside you become family. Linda Cooper, the forensic accountant, had joined the foundation staff. She trained survivors in financial literacy, helped them understand and escape financial abuse, gave them the tools I'd needed but hadn't had. As the guests arrived, as the ballroom filled with people who cared about the cause, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just peace, not just safety, joy. The governor spoke first, then Marcus, then several survivors who'd been helped by the foundation. Their stories were heartbreaking and inspiring. Each one proof that escape was possible, that rebuilding was possible, that the system could work if you had the right support. Finally, it was my turn to speak. I walked to the podium, looked out at the crowd, saw supportive faces, curious faces, faces of people who'd followed my story and faces of people who were hearing it for the first time. 5 years ago, I stood in this room and let people destroy me. They laughed, they filmed, they thought I was nothing. The room was completely silent. What they didn't know was that I'd spent months documenting everything, building a case, preparing for the moment when I could finally tell the truth and have people believe me. Because that's what abuse survivors face every day. The question of whether anyone will believe us, whether our evidence is strong enough, whether we deserve protection. I paused. Some people say what I did was revenge. They're wrong. Revenge is hurting someone to make yourself feel better. What I did was justice. I protected myself and my daughter from a man who planned to kill me. I used the legal system exactly as it's designed to be used, and I won. I looked around the room. But not everyone wins. Not everyone has the resources I had, the inheritance that gave me financial freedom, the private investigators and lawyers and time to build a case. Most abuse survivors are barely surviving. They're working minimum wage jobs, raising children alone, fighting just to keep a roof over their heads. They don't have the luxury of patience or strategy or perfect evidence. I leaned forward. That's why we're here tonight. To raise money so that other survivors have the resources I had. To change laws so that other survivors don't have to fight as hard as I did. To build a system that believes women the first time they ask for help, not after they've nearly been killed. The applause was thunderous. After the speeches, after the fundraiser had raised $2.7 million, after the last guest had left, I stood alone in the ballroom. The hotel manager approached. "Ms. Morrison, can I get you anything?" "No, thank you. I just wanted a moment." She nodded and left. I walked to the center of the room, to the exact spot where Amber had poured wine on my dress, where Carolyn had called me garbage, where my life had burned down and been rebuilt from the ashes. I thought about the woman I'd been that night, scared, pregnant, pretending to be weak so that her enemies would underestimate her, planning the most public, devastating exposure of abuse that any of them had ever seen. I thought about the woman I'd become, strong, successful, a mother and an advocate and a survivor who'd turned her trauma into purpose. People always want to know if I'm happy now, if destroying Ryan and his family gave me the peace I was looking for. The answer is complicated. I'm not happy because I destroyed them. I'm happy because I survived them, because my daughter is growing up safe and loved, because I found purpose in helping other women find their own strength. Because I learned that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen to you. Being controlled is worse. Being diminished is worse. Being told you're nothing until you believe it is worse. I'm happy because I proved them wrong. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. I proved that I was something, that I mattered, that I deserved safety and respect in a life free from fear. And more importantly, I proved it to myself. Sometimes Charlotte asks about her father. Not often, she's too young to really understand. But she knows most kids have two parents and she only has one. "Where's my dad?" she asked last month. I knelt down to her level, looked into her eyes, so bright and innocent and trusting. "Your biological father made some very bad choices. He hurt people. He's in prison, and he's going to be there for a very long time. But you have me, and you have so many people who love you. You're not missing anything, sweetheart. You have everything you need." She thought about that, then she hugged me. "I'm glad I have you, Mama. I'm glad I have you too, baby." That's the victory, not the gala, not the arrests, not even the termination of parental rights, though that was crucial. The real victory is Charlotte growing up knowing she's loved, knowing she's safe, knowing that her mother fought for her before she was even born and will keep fighting for her forever. The real victory is me, standing in this ballroom 5 years later, no longer afraid, no longer diminished, no longer pretending to be less than I am just to survive. I'm Emma Morrison. I survived systematic abuse. I documented everything. I used the legal system to protect myself and my daughter. I built a foundation that's helped thousands of women escape their own nightmares. And I did it wearing a cheap Target dress that got torn in front of 300 people. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them think you're weak. Let them underestimate you. Let them laugh, and then prove them catastrophically wrong. I walked out of the ballroom, out of the hotel I owned, into the night where my daughter waited for me at home. The woman in the torn dress was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone free, someone who'd learned that the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's becoming so powerful that your abusers become irrelevant, so successful that their opinions don't matter, so protected that they can never hurt you again. That's not revenge. That's victory. That's justice. That's love. And it's the story I'll tell my daughter when she's old enough to understand, not to make her afraid, but to make her strong, to teach her that silence isn't safety, that patience isn't weakness, that documenting everything and building your case and waiting for the right moment to strike isn't vindictive. It's strategic. It's smart. It's survival. Ryan Mitchell planned to kill me. Instead, I made him disappear. Legally, permanently, completely. And I did it while protecting the life growing inside me, while fighting for both of us, while proving that being a mother means sometimes you have to be a warrior too. 5 years later, I'm still here, still fighting, still protecting, still proving that women who've been told they're nothing can become everything. That's my story. That's my victory. That's my truth. And if you're reading this, if you're in a situation like I was, if you're being told you're worthless, If you're being controlled and diminished and hurt, please hear me. Document everything. Build your case. Find people who believe you. And when you're ready, when you're safe, when you have the resources and support you need, fight back. Not for revenge, for survival, for protection, for your future, for yourself. You are not nothing. You never were. And the people who told you otherwise were lying to control you. But their control ends the moment you decide it ends. Be patient, be strategic, be smart. And when the moment comes, burn it all down and rebuild something better from the ashes. That's what I did. That's what thousands of survivors have done. That's what you can do too. The woman in the torn dress became a warrior, and so can you.